Why you not gonna spoil up the people them good place, bro? Man, listen. Jamaicans are into everything, you know. Jamaicans are the best of the best, and they can also be the worst of the worst. And when they're bad, they're really bad. Here's another story about a Jamaican being bad. But I was talking to somebody recently and they said they're from the Cayman Islands. And I said to them, y'all don't have too many murders. You had about 5 last year. And the person said yes, and 4 of them were done by Jamaicans. So if y'all people don't keep coming to our island committing murders, we would literally have no murders. I felt so ashamed. So I had to go look this up for myself. So the first thing I looked up was a little bit about the Cayman Islands. So the Cayman Islands is a British overseas territory that encompasses 3 islands in the Western Caribbean Sea. Grand Cayman, which is the largest island, and this is known for its beach resorts and varied scuba diving and snorkeling sites. Then you have another one that's called Cayman Brac. This is a popular launch point for deep sea fishing excursion. And then you have one that's called Little Cayman. Now, the smallest island is home to diverse wildlife, from endangered iguanas to seabirds such as the red-footed boobies and other things. Their population number as of now sits at 74,457. That's not a lot of people for an entire country. So the Cayman Islands is a super small country, must say, and their murder rate is even smaller, and it makes sense. Murder in the Cayman Islands generally occur in low single digit numbers each year, although spikes have been reported in some years gone by. But due to the island's small population, even a small increase in the number of murders can be significant and can seem alarming to the natives who are not used to having murders on their island. I'll give you a good example. Jamaica's numbers look like 1,100 per year, 1,200, 13, 14, 15, 1,600 per year. And I know Jamaica's population is pushing on 3 million in comparison to the Cayman Island, which is just 74,457. However, in the Cayman Islands, their murder numbers for the last couple of years is as follows. In 2024, they had 4 murders for that entire year. In 2023, they had 4 murders for that entire year. In 2022, they had 4 murders for that entire year. In 2021, they had 3 murders for that entire year. In 2020, they had 3 murders for that entire year. And in 2019, they had 1 murder on the island for that entire year. This is to give you an idea of how rare a murder is in the Cayman Islands. Now, with that said, there's a story out of the Cayman Islands about a Jamaican man who went to the Cayman Islands and did exactly what this video is about. Remember, I just told you, I was talking to somebody from the Cayman Islands and I said, wow, you guys have a low murder rate. And I think I said, you have like 5 per year. And he said, yeah, and 4 of those are done by Jamaicans. So if Jamaicans never come to the Cayman Islands and commit murders, we would virtually have a murder-free country. Wow. That's something for Jamaicans to think about. Now, out of the Cayman news, an extended life sentence was handed down to a Jamaican man for shooting a father in front of his 2-year-old daughter in the Cayman Islands. George Orlando Sr. the Jamaican, he was sentenced on Friday, October 3rd, to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 34 years and 8 months. He was sentenced to this for fatally shooting the father in front of his 2-year-old daughter. This is something that shakes up the entire island of the Cayman Islands. They're not used to this level of violence, and anytime it happens, they are shook. A jury had earlier convicted the Jamaican of shooting a person by the name of Devontae Devo Hernandez, who was just 25 years old. And they said that he shot him in the chest at point blank range in broad daylight in open downtown Georgetown on the morning of the 29th of September 2023 as his little daughter played nearby. Hernandez's mother and other relatives who were in court to hear Justice Cheryl Richards deliver the sentence, they described the Jamaican, whose name is Senior, they described him as a monster who had deprived their family of a loving father, a son, and a brother. The Jamaican, Senior, who was 36 years old, who was remanded in Northward Prison, he opted not to be present either in person or through video link to hear his sentence being passed. I guess in the Cayman Islands, you have a choice. They're going to sentence you today. You've been found guilty already. You can tell them, I don't care. I already know you're going to give me what you're going to give me. So just leave me in my cell and let me be. Go pass your sentence down and then come move me to where I'm going to serve my time. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. And he opted for that. So Richards added an extra 56 months to the mandatory minimum 30 years life sentence because of a number of aggravated factors, which Richards, being the judge, said included the shooting being carried out in a very public place with the victim's daughter and a number of other people being present, and as well as the premeditated nature of the killing. Now, they obviously have proof that he planned this murder and executed as planned. So the jury had heard during the trial that the Jamaican was wearing a balaclava or a mask and was wearing gloves as he had arrived at the scene where the shooting took place, a parking lot at Soundway at the junction of Shedden Road and Eastern Avenue. He waited in a rental car that had fake license plate around 10:20 a.m. The car had been rented by the Jamaican's girlfriend, and the court heard and was found by police later on with the original license plate restored to the vehicle. So the Jamaican got his girlfriend to rent him the car, and then he switched the license plate, put a fake license plate on the car so he can drive it to the murder scene. And then once he was finished committing the murder, he drove the car away and changed the license plate back to the original license plate, thinking that that would help to him not getting caught. Wow. Richards, the judge, said that the Jamaican Senior, as his name is, if you're listening to this, just know that every time I say Senior from now on, instead of saying the Jamaican, I'm talking about the Jamaican. Understood? So, The judge said that Senior and his accomplices waited in a car, and they were recorded on CCTV camera driving past the parking lot about 3 times before the fatal shooting was carried out. It is not unreasonable to describe this as a stakeout, the judge said. After all, they were staked out and stalking the victim. It was chillingly executed in just mere seconds, using a handgun to shoot Mr. Hernandez in the chest at point blank range, causing a perforated wound from which death was almost instantaneous, said the judge. The judge then said, it was executed blatantly, without any regards for the presence of other people being around, and apparently without even fear of getting caught. It must have been terrifyingly inexplicable to the young child who had just had her chocolate cereal with her dad and was engaged in a game of pickup rocks, just playing, right next to her father. She said that the time from which the getaway vehicle arrived at the scene to when it left after the shooting was less than 2 minutes. And that's to include stalking time, parked, waiting, watching the victim. I guess they had to confirm that that was him. And then in a matter of seconds, they executed him and were out of there. After the shooting, which was described as drug-related during the trial, Senior, or the Jamaican, went into hiding, and he was eventually arrested 3 weeks later, still in the Cayman Islands. Senior had admitted that he was a drug dealer and that he had met the victim Hernandez and others while dealing drugs. The nature of their relationship was about drugs. The surprise came when the judge, in arriving at the sentence to be handed down to Senior, also considered the fact that this Jamaican had a previous conviction in Canada where he had lived for a number of years. That conviction was for a firearms offense which involved a drive-by shooting. So this wasn't a case in Canada of them catching him with an illegal gun. This is a case of him pulling a drive-by. You drive by in a car, you fire at people. Yeah, he did that. And he was convicted in Canada, and he was sent packing. Now, in a pre-sentence hearing, the court was told that Senior, a Jamaican national, was an overstayer in the Cayman Islands at the time of this shooting with no legal right to even be on the island. The judge noted that Senior, the Jamaican, had been sentenced to 2 months imprisonment and a $1,500 fine for making false representations for not revealing in his work permit forms in 2017 and in 2018 that he had these previous drug and firearm related criminal convictions in Canada. So he had already served 2 months in prison in the Cayman Islands and was fined $1,500. And that was about him filling out work permits, government documents to get work permit for the Cayman Islands, but lying on the application saying, well, he did not reveal to them that he was a fugitive or that he was a criminal, or that he had already been arrested in a previous drugs and firearm related criminal conviction in Canada, and said that the judge said deportation had been recommended for him at that point. They wanted to deport him back to Jamaica after he had served those 2 months and was fined the $1,500. And it was not stated in court when he had been convicted of those false representation charges, because the question would remain, if he was found guilty of a deportable offense, why was he not deported from Cayman Islands? Because if he was, he would not have had a chance to kill this person. So the judge recommended that upon completion of his life sentence for this murder, that he should be deported from the Cayman Islands back to Jamaica, his island of birth. On his release, she said, it cannot be conducive to the public good to have such an offender remain on this island. In other words, you got to go. We do not want you on our island. You are dangerous. And after you're done doing your time, you have to go. He's 36 already. And he must do a minimum of, I believe, another 36 in order for him to even be considered for probation or parole. He will be 72 years old. He will be 72 years old going back to Jamaica, fresh out of a Cayman prison. I don't think he's going to be much of a threat to anybody, but they reserve the right to say who they want to live on their island versus who has to go. So, the courts had heard emotional victims' impact statements by Hernandez's mother and his sister, who both talked about the loss of a son, a father, and a brother, whom they described as loving and caring. Mother Denicia Hugh, she cried, she sobbed heavily as she sat at the back of the courtroom while the judge read out the sentencing decision. In her statement, which she had earlier read out in open court, the mother of the victim said that Hernandez was the third of her 6 children and that his death had broken her heart and traumatized her and her family. She described him as kind, loving, loyal, and generous to all his siblings, his friends, family, and the first and the last stranger. She said that he was crazy in love with his baby girl and that he adored his daughter, and he always went above and beyond to make sure that all her needs were met. That's so sad because she will now grow up without a dad, and he passed away too early for her to even have memories of him doing nice things for her or being with her. The victim's sister, Michaela Hernandez, in her victim impact statement, she said that her family had been shattered by her brother's death. She said that she had last seen him alive a few days before the shooting. And when they chatted and laughed, and he had talked about his plans to work hard and to build a better life for his daughter. And I remember feeling proud of him. And I saw a young man who was growing, who was trying, and who was loving deeply, she said. She then added that the next time I saw him was on the murder scene, lifeless, laying on the ground. That image is burnt into my mind and it hurts me. Now, reacting outside of court on Friday to the extended sentence that was imposed on the Jamaican, Hugh, the mother, told reporters, "I'm just happy. It doesn't seem fitting because I don't know that I'll ever be happy with the loss of my son, but I'm thankful that this monster is going to be in prison for a very long time. And when he comes out, he will still not be among us." She then said, "And so, this is a victory. It's not a revenge type of victory, but who feels it knows it. And so, for us, this is a win." Now, after leaving the courthouse, she said that her next stop would be to visit her son's gravesite. Damn. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what you think about this one, and I'll catch you on the next video. It's SouFLoTV. I'm out. Peace.